For sure. And just, I think even if you're only solely motivated financially, that's your only goal. You don't care about helping people or doing the right thing. You're going to make more money in the long run, by having a good reputation and doing the right thing and operating with integrity. Even if that's not your focus, burning someone on one deal, might make a little bit more on that one, but you'd make 100x, if not more, if you just did things the right way.
And welcome to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. We are back. We are here with Ky Logue out of the Wholesaling Syndicate in Texas. And my man, we had such a great conversation talking about some of the interesting things you're doing in wholesaling, specifically about using AI in working in virtual territories. And so it was like, man, we got to talk about this because I've never really heard somebody use it in the way that you do. And then further to that, you've got that wicked painting in the background that your wife made for you. So I was like, that second to none. It was like, I got to talk to you, period. So welcome to the show, my man.
Man, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. And I've done a lot of podcasts lately, but it's cool when you connect with someone and I'm like, oh, we vibe right away. So I'm happy to be here.
I think it's probably, we found out just in the preamble today, just talking after the last time we spoke, was it because we both do jujitsu? And jujitsu just attracts, I think, a certain type of people.
100%.
Yeah. So talk to me. Wholesaling, the syndicate that you started. Tell me a little bit about it, and sort of what's the message that you're delivering. Talk to me.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been an entrepreneur since I was 23, so almost a decade, so 9 years now. Always wanted to get into real estate. Eventually, I had all these limiting beliefs on why I couldn't. I thought I had to have rich parents, I thought I had to have perfect credit, and know how to fix things, and all these things. Now looking back, they're just limiting beliefs. But all these reasons I thought would stop me from getting into real estate. But at the same time, I always wanted to do it. So I'm like, one day I'll do it. So I was listening to podcasts like this, a lot of Bigger Pockets, and I just was reading books, anything I could. And one book I was reading, they just had a small little blurb about this thing called real estate wholesaling. And like, all you have to do is sales and marketing, but you don't need money, experience. Literally all the limiting beliefs I had is you don't need any of that. You just need to know how to do sales and marketing. I'm like, wow, that's all I've done my whole life. So sign me up. So bought a little course, did YouTube University, dove in, started doing it like right after COVID, or probably still during COVID. And did it. First deal, barely made $1,000. I made like $1,100, and it's frustrating, but I'm like, oh, I got proof of concept now. Yeah, this stuff works. And this is about almost like 60 days in. And then right after that, literally like a week or so after, another lead I was working called back, and then we made over $60,000 on that deal. And I'm like, okay, now I'm really bought in. So like went all in, and it's been going great. I started to document the journey, started to post more on social media, started to kind of share me making live calls and other things, and it seemed like people were interested, and that slowly grew into us doing events, to us starting a mastermind, CRM, a whole bunch of other things. And that's kind of what Syndicate is, our podcast. It's, a bunch of all the training resources. Really, it's kind of all the stuff I wish I had when I started in one place to, help people go and get going faster.
When you look at wholesaling has, two different stigmas tied to it. The one stigma is, it makes really good money, and it's a great community, and it's people helping people. One thing you mentioned the last time we were talking about is it's trading equity for speed and convenience. And I thought that was a really impactful thing to say. And then there's the other side of wholesaling where it's predatory. It's, it's grandma losing her house to somebody who is not doing things, that are ethical. Not I'm saying in the sense of term of business, but just humanity.
Right.
How do you help people stay on the course of doing the right thing?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really just knowing your core values and attracting the right people, and you'll find people that you vibe with and people that you don't. But I think like anything, any industry, it's like the 80-20 rule, I think works pretty much everywhere. But 20% of people probably are doing things the right way or operating the right way. 80% of people watched, one YouTube video or a bunch of TikToks and no idea what they're doing, shouldn't be in it, don't know how to run the numbers, they're screwing over the investors by, just straight up fabricating what the comps are, fabricating what the repairs are, and, getting like newer investors who don't know to do their own due diligence, screwing them over, screwing the seller over. And it's not great, because there's definitely a lot of that. You'll see like new wholesalers, they'll, or inexperienced ones or unethical ones, whatever you want to call them, they'll say, oh, of course I can do that price, because they talk to some other people, they offer them a high price, they never end up moving it. And you just put there's like not a worse situation you put someone in than, they get ready to move, pack up all their stuff, and the house actually isn't selling.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Yeah.
Really, we just really preach, be ethical, be honest with people, because the real estate industry is a lot smaller than most people think it is. I feel like word gets around, especially on the buyers. People aren't going to want to deal with you. We do fix and flips as well. So if people send me deals, and if I look at a couple deals and those numbers aren't real, I can tell they're if anyone's been done any amount of deals for any amount of time, they can quickly see through it. And it's like I just stop looking at your emails, block them. I don't want to see your messages anymore. You're just wasting my time. So it's really just.
I like the idea of what you say, that the market is so small, and I think that's extremely true and very accurate, because I was just talking with a syndicator of multifamily a few weeks ago, and we were having a great chat. We're talking about their course and all this other stuff, and then I'm just on the phone, I think yesterday, talking to a capital raiser, and I'm like, oh, she'd make a really good connection for this fellow, and lo and behold, there he just met, like just that day, like that afternoon. She said, actually, I was late coming to your meeting because I was just finishing up with him.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, and they're not in the same city. They're not in the same region. They're both in the United States. So that's the only thing they have in common other than real estate. And so I agree with you. The real estate market is extremely small. And to be successful, I think you're right. Your reputation, your integrity has to sit to a true moral compass that, will resonate with the people around you. And then
100%.
That's the type of people you're going to attract.
For sure. And just, I think even if you're only solely motivated financially, that's your only goal, you don't care about helping people or doing the right thing, you're going to make more money in the long run, by having a good reputation and doing the right thing and operating with integrity. Even if that's not your focus, burning someone on one deal, might make a little bit more on that one, but you'd make 100x, if not more, if you just did things the right way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Do you find that people are more predatory when they're sort of part-time into this, and it's like they're dipping their toe and they're trying to grab a piece, versus the people who've made this as their lifestyle?
I kind of a bit of both. So I think more part-time, just not knowing. But yeah, I think some organizations, some companies, like some bigger, like wholesale, if it's out here, I think it's just, core values, just wrong people and just not operating with certain standards. But yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, I guess it's the tough philosophical question on why people do what they do.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Now, the other interesting thing is when you look at what you're doing, a lot of people, they're going to get into wholesaling, and then they look around the street and they're like, look up the street, look down the street, and start putting up those, signs and all that other stuff. What you're doing is a whole bunch different when you talk about your virtual wholesaling. Talk a little bit about what that looks like, and because that was extremely interesting to me.
For sure. Yeah. So little I know when I moved to San Antonio, I'm like, oh, it'd be a great market to get into. It's one of the most competitive markets. There's a lot of other wholesalers here. There's a lot of big outfits with big ad spends that have been here operating for years. And I didn't realize how competitive it was. But when I came in, try to have that white belt mentality of, I'm going to do what these people are doing. They've been successful. I'm not going to try to, do my own things I learned over the years. And it worked, but it was just a lot of work, and it wasn't easy. And not saying that it is easy, but I found better ways to do it by implementing some of the things I've learned. So I'm like, why would I fish where everyone else is fishing when there's a whole big country out there, and there's states where literally nobody knows about wholesaling or is doing wholesaling. And so what I did was so my background's in marketing as well. So I did Google Trends, looked at kind of a search, like how many searches words we get for wholesaling. So like here in Texas, a lot of places, like there's a lot of people looking up wholesaling. Same in like Phoenix and Arizona, there's a lot of wholesalers there. So there's a lot of search volume for people looking at it, looking to get into it. So I looked for markets that didn't have a lot of search volume at first, and then, but also had a lot of buyers and a lot of activity going on. So I could make sure I'd be able to move the deals. And then we started to focus on them. We started to pull lists from the county, from the city. It varies where you get it from, depending on the city. But we identified some markets we wanted to focus on, started pulling those lists and doing it there. And it was a whole lot easier on the acquisition side as far as getting the deals than trying to compete with, 10 other people and being like the 11th caller for the day and just hoping they like me a little bit better.
Yeah. And for looking at some of those markets, you had another strategy of when you were pulling some lists around specific things you're looking for in the city, and which I thought was also an interesting way of attacking that, because you've now said you're looking very strategically based on some marketing trends, based on Google Analytics. And then the second thing is looking at the market and saying, what is the size of the market, the number of transactions to know that there's the volume to be able to be successful. And then you went very, very strategic about this next element on looking for specific styles of properties. Talk a little bit about that one.
For sure. So usually if someone wants that speed and convenience, if they're willing to sell at a discount, there's usually some underlying reason. So it's a distressed property or distressed seller. So they either have something going on where they need to sell quickly, where the traditional real estate model doesn't work. It could be foreclosure. They just don't have enough time. They kind of drag their feet to the last second, and they don't have enough time before the auction to list it with a realtor and go through all the open houses and everything. So that'd be a great reason. Code violations are one of my favorite lists to pull. So you can look at properties that are getting in trouble with the city or the county for not keeping up with it. And you can just export them. A lot of them just have it. Sometimes you have to reach out and get that list to the county directly or city directly. And so those are one of our favorite ones. We can just pull it, and then we're just targeting distressed properties. We're reaching out by phone, text, voicemail drops, really however we can, just to get in front of them and say, hey, are you interested in selling? Because usually the way one person does anything is how they do everything. So if they're not keeping up with the outside of the property, they're probably not keeping up with the inside. They might have financial issues. So any kind of signs that point to distress, those are ones that we're targeting. And then going back to you for identifying the markets, we're even using ChatGPT and AI now to say, hey, these are the parameters we're looking for in markets. Try to find some markets that have a low level of competition, but a lot of activity. And then it basically will score them against each other. It saves a lot of the legwork of us manually doing that research.
And you're doing that using a lot of AI, is my understanding as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll chat GPT Pro. I think it's the best $20 a month I spend. It's like it just saves me so much time from literally everything I do. And literally, once you learn how to talk to it, you start playing with it. It can do literally anything you can put your mind to or imagine.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. If you kind of just hone in on the ChatGPT thing just for a moment, as a fellow ChatGPT or who it's integrated into so many things I do in my day. What would you say is something that makes it so special for you? What are the things that you do that other people aren't doing with it?
Yeah, so really it's just knowing how to make the prompts. So once you figure out the prompts, you can kind of figure out anything. So like literally I did one with my mastermind. I was showing them how to identify the markets that are low competition and value. And then they started to ask questions like, oh, what if I need to find buyers there? And then, so we did the initial prompt. So basically how I do my prompts is I'll say, this is who I am. First, I ask it who I am. So it can do a quick Bing search, look me up, find out who I am, what I'm about. So if you're out making content, putting yourself out there, it makes it a lot easier. So this is, who's Ky Logue? What's We Buy Side Houses, or what's the Wholesaling Syndicate? And they'll pull all that up. I'm like, great. My goal is to find markets for wholesaling that have lots of buyer activity, but low levels of competition. So I can focus on doing virtual wholesaling there. Create a list of 10 of the best markets for me to focus on. And then boom, you'll get that. And then I just keep going deeper with it. Like, hey, okay, perfect. Tell me more about this market. How does that compare to the market that I'm in San Antonio? Literally almost instantly tell you like all the different reasons, why it's such a good market, why it's there. And then just keep going deeper with it. And another way I see people mess up is if they don't get the answer like they want, they'll just like, whatever, doesn't work. But if you just keep asking it different ways, it'll usually give you the answer. Same with sales. You just find a different way to ask and you'll get the answer. But be like, hey, give me a list of the top developers. So if we're doing land or something, like, give me a list of some of the top developers in the area, and they'll send it out. Like, what's their contact info? They'll even give me the emails, phone numbers. Sometimes it won't. I'll ask like, oh, if you did know the answer, then like it'll shoot you the.
And literally, you got to sales magic it back where it doesn't know. Then you say, if you did know, what would it be? And then it answers it.
Right. Or if you give me an example, and it's funny because it'll give it to you, but you just go back and forth with it. But then right then, like literally in less than 10 minutes, we had a bunch of new markets to look at. We had all these buyers, developers right in the area. We had their info. You can literally ask it like, hey, I want to target code violations in this market. How do you find that? Like, how do you find the code violations? Like, great, here's that. I'm like, cool, please provide links. And then like, boom, here's the links. I have the links to go to. I can download it all. And like, literally what took me days of research, I can do in less than a half hour and just have buyers. I can have lists to pull. I can have all this stuff just almost like instantly.
How much do you find that it gets into that sort of hallucinogenic state? You know what I'm talking about, where ChatGPT just kind of, it took a little bit of mushrooms and it's just off the rails. And you're like, I got to reset this chat.
Pretty often. I do it all the time. So yeah, because I'll push it till it gets there, and then just start a new chat. So I have all the conversations saved on the side, and I'll run it. Like I have one that is like a copywriter one for me, and I'll just rename the different conversations. I'll literally like get a podcast like we're doing now. I'll get the transcript, be like, hey, this is the transcript of a podcast Ky Logue did. Use this to know how he speaks and how he writes, and then boom, I'll start doing it, and then maybe I don't know how long. After a while, though, I mean, I'll probably get like a few like blog posts and emails and things out of it, and then it just starts to get real weird. And I'm like, okay, you lost the objective. We're gonna have to start over.
I think that's one of the future problems that definitely I know with us with our podcast software, it's something that we've really worked hard to ensure that it doesn't get what my buddy wrote a book called. It's a book called Bit Rot, and it's specifically around AI and some of the problems that can happen. When it gets too big and it's got too many inputs and outputs and all that jazz. It'll be interesting to see how to be able to preemptively stem that going in the next few months and the next few years. I think a lot of the LLMs are really getting in tune with that because they're seeing the side railing happening. I think right now it happens at great speed.
Yeah, no, it happens a lot. Yeah, I think, really not too far down. It's like, yeah, I'll get that point constantly. So yeah. But then
I always tell people with AI, if you treat AI like an employee, you're going to have a better relationship than if you treat it like technology. Because technology, it's like QuickBooks. You expect left side should equal right side when the ledger should balance. With AI, it's going to give you almost like an opinion, and that opinion sometimes is right and sometimes it's way off in the deep end.
100%. Yeah, for me, I like presetting it or pre-framing it, being like, hey, this is my objective. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is your role. And then ask me a series of questions one at a time to help you best accomplish this. And then they'll literally ask you like, okay, what's going on here? What's going on here? Then you feed it all the information and just like think, like you said, an employee, I think it's a great example because like, how can I help you best do your job? And it's going to completely change the answers and responses you get.
Absolutely. And that's the whole idea of the no code future I think we have in the way that we interface with technology. I think in the past it was very hyper analog in the way that we've connected, and now it's getting to analog light, which is verbal, and then the next will be the step of the neural network with Elon Musk, and we won't even have to be verbal in the way we connect with tech.
Yeah, that's crazy. Do you see the video, the first guy using it?
I did not see that yet. I did not see that. That's not that old, that video.
No, yeah, it's really new. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I've been watching all the robot ones lately where they have the full automaton style robots who walk around and can interface with the environment and perform tasks, that you verbally give to them. And I found that very interesting, but I haven't seen the neural network. I haven't been able to get myself situated enough to watch it.
Yeah, it's pretty short one. You don't have to watch all day, but yeah, so the guy's completely paralyzed, neck down, and he's like interfacing technologies. It's just crazy, just with his eyes. And I don't know.
That's amazing. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what our next version of tech looks like. Is it going to be like Westworld? Is it going to be like Altered Carbon? Is it going to be some hybrid of those two? Is it going to be like The Colony? Like, which direction are we going to be taking technology? What damage is it going to do and what opportunities is it going to give us? It's going to be a very interesting. It's because it's going to move at such a sense of speed over the next little bit.
I think Black Mirror does a really good job. So even some of the first season and like older episodes they've done, it seems like we're already there now. It's just pretty crazy.
Yeah, Black Mirror seems like we've already passed that one. Yeah, that's of the past almost.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think the interface of tech, when you look at wholesaling, uses AI. Then the interface of tech, and you say the legal system uses AI. When does it get that AI just has everything?
I don't know. I think sooner than we think.
Somebody says it already does. And we should be we're naive if we don't think that.
Yeah, it seems like they have all the stuff. They have full books. They have all this stuff. I know Elon Musk said if you don't think they have copyright material, you're crazy because they literally have
Well, we even know that AI is learning jujitsu because look at Mark Zuckerberg's doing jujitsu, so we know AI knows jujitsu now.
Right. That's true. I'm sure it could. Yeah, I mean, what are the highest probability moves? What's the best defense here and stuff? I feel like you definitely could build out a little roadmap
to program them in. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really cool. And then now, one thing that you were talking about that's different for yours versus a lot of other people is your buy box. So talk to me a little bit about your buy box when it comes to wholesaling.
Yeah, so it really varies. So it's more kind of what, if I'm just wholesaling, it's not what I'm taking down or doing myself. It's, really what are the buyers they're looking for? And it can vary. Like in California, they're willing to pay a little bit more. So we really usually just got the 70% rule. So whatever the property's worth, fixed up. In an ideal world, there's a house directly across the street, looks exactly the same bedroom, same bathroom, same square foot. And it was just fixed up and flipped. And then you have that number. Obviously, you're not going to find that. So you just kind of scale out as you go and try to find the closest comp you can to that perfect, similar house. And then whatever that sold for, and hopefully it's recent, you find, so you do that 70% minus whatever repairs yours needs, and then minus your wholesale fee. So if I want to make 10 grand, 20 grand, we usually do 20 grand, subtract that number. And then, that's your max allowable offer. So that's the highest I can offer them is this price for me to make what I want to make and for it to make sense. And then just know, it's going to work there. And then some markets, like I said, it's a little bit different. Once you do a deal or two there, though, you kind of get a feel for the market and what buyers are willing to pay there.
And when you have the conversation with the seller, do you explain that 70% buy box to them?
Kind of, yeah. So we'll go through like, hey, this is, so they're like, oh, it's lower than I wanted, or Zillow says my house is worth that. And basically when I talk to sellers, when I do sales, I try to make it as simple as possible, because for us, we're doing this every day. So we have all these terms and things. They don't know what they mean. If you just throw out these industry jargon, they're going to get confused. They're going to get overwhelmed. And they're going to decide they want to think about it because you gave them way too much to think about. So really I just try to almost like you're speaking to a fourth or fifth grade level. Like, hey, this is the house. Like, oh, well, Zillow says my house is worth this, or it's appraised at this number. And I'm like, oh, and you're right. I always agree. Got that from Grant Cardone, but always agree. So agree, definitely, you're right. Zillow says that. And if your house was up to 2024 standards, of course I'd pay that. But I like to do almost like, think you're trading a car, because most people, they sell and buy maybe one or two houses in their lifetime. Cars, people go through them every 5-6 years. So they're like, hey, so basically, I'm a business, I need to make money, but you're bringing me a vehicle that is, 20 years old. It needs this, and that. It needs new paint. It needs all this work on it to get it, up to the current standards of today, where I can get that number. But obviously, this house needs a lot of work. So if you brought it to me, of course I'd pay that price, but I need to do X, Y, and Z, which is going to cost me this. For me to be able to do it and still be able to make a small profit. So the price I'm offering you not isn't only the best we can do, but like I know what the other investors are willing to pay here, it's like the best price you're going to get. And on top of that, we have a great track record of actually closing, getting the deal done. We're not going to go ahead and change any of the terms on you. We're going to be able to get you out of here in 30 days. So you can get desired end result, whatever their motivation is, so you can move closer to your family or downsize, whatever. And then we're going to get it done, quickly, and you're not going to deal with any of the stuff you don't want to deal with. Like, does that make sense? And they're like, yeah.
And when they hear that, how many of them kind of look at it and say, real estate cost versus wholesale fee, and kind of do that reconciliation of value?
For the sellers, like really not many. So most of them kind of get it there. They get the car analogy because like they've dealt with it. They get it like, okay, my house does do that. And we go really deep on like the discovery as far as like asking questions. Like, okay, like, so I do what I call like the reverse walk around. I used to sell cars. We walk around the vehicle and we look like, hey, here's all these dents. Here's all these things. So I basically, not to like try the race, but like to get them back to reality, be like, hey,
yep.
You said it needs the roof, it needs a new foundation. It needs all these things. Like, it's going to be a lot of work. Of course, you could fix it yourself. You could do all that. It'll probably take you this long. And, then you could sell it for that amount. It's going to take you this amount of time. But, really, if you want to get it fat, you told me you want to sell quickly, you're ready to move on, or you have this impending situation, say it's a foreclosure, you really don't have the time to do that. So I think this would be like the best offer for you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think there's certain times where the real estate market, the MLS system makes sense. And I think if it's a true deal where the deal's going to close in the time frame that it says it's going to close, and it gives them the result that they're looking for, it's not always about money. It could be about speed. It could be about a lot of other things, a closure, whatever it could be. And it brings things together. I agree with you on that.
100%. Yeah. I think that's why it's so important to find out what they're actually looking to accomplish, and like, what's their goal? Where are they moving to? Like, why are they selling? Because most people just focus on the numbers, and it just becomes like a logical conversation where, it's yes or no. But when you're actually helping them get to where they want to go, and you're making their life easier for them, you're giving them speed, convenience. It makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. And how many of the deals do you typically close on versus assign? Like, what's your sort of ratio in that perspective?
Yes, it's about, I'd say 70% to 80% we do. It's a little bit lower if we're in a new market where, there might be some unknown variables we don't know, like they're not willing to pay as much there. We did a nationwide campaign recently that we tested, which was just all over, and we were getting properties just in the middle of nowhere. But there weren't any buyers. I was calling people and they thought it like buyers, and they thought it was a scam because they're like, they don't know what wholesaling is. They don't know what this is. And they're like, what are you talking about? And even trying to explain to them, just weren't getting anywhere. And so we had to let some of those go. But my advice for everyone too is you have to let it go, and you're not getting anywhere. Like, do the seller a favor and exit out as quickly and gracefully as you can, so they can make other plans and move on.
And then for when I talk about an assignment, maybe I'm using terms that are different than in Canada, but the idea that you assign it to an investor to close, so you don't close on it versus ones that you close on.
Exactly. Yeah. So as far as that, we transitioned about a year ago to just doing mostly wholesaling. We haven't done any flips in over a year. So pretty much everything we're assigning to another
assigning to an investor. Yeah. Yeah. Now it's interesting because of all the shifts that are happening in NAR and in the real estate environment. The real estate, I think, loses a lot of edge when the buyer agency, if the buyer agency is in jeopardy, I think that takes a lot of value out of the MLS system, because that relationship of buyer and the relationship of buyer rep versus the relationship of the seller and the seller rep. If there's only seller agents and there's no buyer agents, that market is a shift.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the whole point of putting on the MLS and listen to the realtors so you can get as many eyeballs in front of as many people as you can, so you can hypothetically get the best offer.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I mean, I don't know enough to say the direction that it'll go, but I definitely think if buyers agents aren't being paid as part of the transaction of real estate, and it's not whether the buyer pays for it or whether the seller pays for it, it's whether it's being financed is really the question.
Right.
Because if the buyer pays for it on a contract that's outside of the seller, but it's still financed as part of the transaction, it's still a normal buyer rep, situation. But generally right now, the seller contract covers both the buyer and the seller, but really the person who's paying for it is the buyer.
Right.
The buyer's paying for everything.
100%.
It's not the seller. The seller doesn't pay anything because they only pay when it's sold. And so the buyer is paying for the real price of the house, plus whatever transactional costs, which is the seller agent and the buyer agent. And so it's interesting to look at that and then compare that to wholesaling and see this sort of, the structure of both of those.
Right. Yeah, I think it could be a bit of a transition to having to do both things. So it'll be interesting for sure. We just had a guy come on the podcast and kind of go over a lot of the misconceptions, and with the NAR settlement, there's like really a lot. Yeah, I was surprised like how many different things, like, oh, this isn't factual, this isn't done, and hasn't actually even been completely signed yet. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea because I haven't been super into it because again, I'm not on that side. But yeah, like a lot of the stuff that's been being reported and being touted as fact, like wasn't accurate. So it's definitely crazy.
Well, I think a lot of wholesalers have an advantage against many real estate agents because a lot of real estate agents were just relying on the MLS system to do all the work.
Right.
Where wholesalers are used to hustling.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a little bit of a difference of mindset. And there's a lot of real estate agents. I mean, I've been a real estate agent since 2012 or 13 or whatever. And so I know what it takes to be a real estate agent. But the idea is a lot of real estate agents just kind of sat on the MLS as their value system.
Right.
And that's going to be a huge pivot.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's just learning to get creative and roll up your sleeves and get to work. So I have a friend who has a brokerage, and they have like 100 plus agents, but he teaches them all, like not just to, try to fit everything into this, a square into a circle peg. He's like, have or hole, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, he teaches them to do it all. So he has the real estate agents. Not only do they have the option of listing it, doing traditional model, but he teaches them how to wholesale. He teaches them how to do, creative financing, seller finance, subject tos. So like really just adding all those different tools to your toolbox. So no matter what, you can, find a way. There's so many different ways to skin the cat in real estate and make money. So I think it's just learning some of those other strategies.
Absolutely. And if it's to the benefit of the buyer and it's to the benefit of the seller, you're adhering to your fiduciary duty for your client.
100%.
And I think, when you have that agency, you have to make sure that you really hold that to be true. And I think that's imperative. And I think a lot of people sort of lost their way on that, especially in the past 3 years when the market was just going ballistic.
Mm.
And it was more about, can I just get this deal closed? Like, it doesn't matter what it's going to close at. It's just, we need to get this, my offer accepted, to now where it's a very different market. And then even further to a very different regulatory market. It's going to be interesting the next few years in real estate. I'm kind of excited to see what happens.
100%. Yeah. Same here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, dude, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, man. I hopefully I can get down to your town and I'll see you at the gym, and we'll get a couple rolls in, which would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it'd be great.
And that'd be great. Whether it's no-gi or gi, we'll figure that one out. And for people to reach you, best way to reach you is at the wholesalingsyndicate.com is the great spot to reach you. Obviously, you'll see that nice logo all over the website, which is great. And you've got your podcast as well, too, that I think people should definitely check out. And the Resale Wholesaling Syndicate podcast. And I think that's a great podcast for people to check out as well. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, Real Estate Wholesaling Syndicate podcast. Yeah, we do episodes all the time. And again, I'd love to have you come on. We have to set that up for sure. And we just interview other investors and wholesalers and find out what's actually working today and find real tactical advice, which sounds like you're doing here as well, which I love. So you guys can get more deals done and make more money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bring more success. And, the thing is money only matters when you make money matter.
Mm.
That's my belief. And if you could, find success in what you're doing and then translate that success into an impact to the world, I think that's a beautiful thing. So
I love that.
I love it. Keep up with the great work. And guys, this is the Money, the Mindset, the Mentoring podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.